Hi, my name is Daniela and I'm a proud cat mom, and if you love cats, please make sure you subscribe to our channel because we love making pet lover DIY videos. And in today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you step by step how I created this adorable sign just to hang outside in your garden, in your front yard, just to celebrate the fall festivities and show off your love for cats. Our first stop for this project is going to be the Dollar Tree so we can get the pumpkin that we like. Also pick up some paint if you don't have some at home already, and some ribbon or some yarn so that you can hang it up. So this is the best pumpkin that I found, and I know that it was the pumpkin because it only had this little small strike on the side and everything else is as clean as possible. And that's really what you want to aim for. You want at least one of the sides to have no imperfections or very small imperfections. So pick out a pumpkin that is going to make life easier for you. If it has a dark streak, maybe try to figure out how you could work it into the design, but otherwise, really just try to find a blank canvas. So whenever we look at an image, the first thing you want to do is easily dissect it into the easiest form. So when we look at this pumpkin, we can see it's very geometric, which is one of my favorite things about it. We have some triangle ears, just some regular old school triangles. We have circles for eyes, a square nose, and some long triangles for the whiskers. And this is what we're going to use to replicate into our pumpkin. We're going to start off by finding the center of our pumpkin. And I have my massive ruler that I used when I went to college. And that's what I am going to be working with. But if you just have a normal size 12-inch ruler, you can see that you'll also be able to use this project. So you don't need anything super fancy. So right here is more or less where our middle area is. And then I always measure from the highest point. So my highest point is this top and my lowest is the pumpkin bottom. So now we have, it's about 8, so it's like 4-1. So I'm just eyeballing it. Again, it's not too big of a deal because all of this is going to be covered in paint, but this is your center. So if anything, this is probably the section that's going to end up being the top of the nose. Just going to do like a quick sketch of how I think that it should look like, more or less, and then we'll go in with the ruler and measure it all out. Again, I'm sticking to just the basic shapes, so big triangle for one whisker, a little bit of space, and second triangle for the second one. The main thing is just that nose. Like once you have that nose in the middle, that's what's going to give you the ability to know exactly where you need everything else to go. And it's all subjective. Like I like things in 3, so even though the original cat only had 2 whiskers, I'm going to add a 3rd one. And but you can sort of see the cat coming in, and then we have the ears that we can't forget about. I would really just encourage you to get your ears to a place where you like them and you feel comfortable with. Like whenever we look at inspiration, or even as you're looking at me doing this, you know, everyone has different likes, so you want to make sure that you do it based on what you like. But this is more or less how my cat will look like. I'm going to now start evening things out with the ruler, and then we'll start painting. We're just gonna measure things out. And you can see here a little bit of where I had my original mark saying that this was the center. I did it about 1.5 inches, and then I did 1 inch So even though the picture originally did have a square, I didn't like the way that the square looked. I thought that it looked too big once I drew it out. So now we're going to do about 1.5. Again, I'm not super worried about this being the exact thing. It's going to be something that's going to be hanged outside. So I'm just enjoying the process, enjoying the sketching, and seeing how things line up. So I'm going to try to make all my points just at least be semi parallel to each other. So it looks like here I have it at about 0.75, and then here is a 1/2 inch, so I gotta move it a little bit more. And if you haven't already, this eraser is like magic. So I would highly suggest, if you're doing this project or any of the projects that we do, pencil and eraser are usually a must. And this eraser is really great at getting rid of all the marks. So we have, this one's 1.5. This one is about 1. And this one's about 1.5 as well. Okay, so we can say that the two outside ones are gonna be 1.5, and the middle one is going to be 1. You'll notice that for the points, I'm not really super concerned about whether it's like right in the middle or anything like that. I'm just trying to make some basic looking triangles, nothing fancy. So don't get discouraged. It'll all work out. And this is going to be like the perfect pet lover DIY home decor goodie that you make for the fall. And depending on what color you make it, you could keep it year round, which is the awesome thing about this project. Like right now, I'm leaning towards painting it purple because most of my outside flowers are purple. So we shall see. All right, so you can see here that I have the two different, like this one I started right here, and then there's the second one, and about the third. Okay, so see how this one is lower, so we want to bring it up a little, because I actually really like the way that these came out. It looks very clean. I like the spacing between all of them. It was all accidental, but it worked out. So I want to try to replicate it as much as possible on the other side. Again, not super worried about anything going on. You know, if it's slightly off, it's slightly off. It's fine. All right, so I did end up making this side section pretty similar to the other one. So we did the matching line first, and now we're going to do 1.5 inches here. And in between the lines, it'll be about 1/2 inch. And then we're just going to erase all of the extra lines before we get into the eyes, because we don't want to be confused about what size they should be because we have too many lines on our whiskers. Now we can start working on the eyes and the ears. So the eyes, the way that I sketched them out, they're about 1 inch. And I'm actually kind of curious about making them into heart shapes. Yeah, I think I actually like the hearts. Aww. So I'm just free drawing them, like you saw that it was about 1 inch on each one. So I'm just using the little circles as my guiding point on how to make them. So it looks like 125 and 125. So they're both about the same. And for the ears, I actually like the way that the ears came out. Like I accidentally did end up making the inner ears inside of the outer ones. The ears are about 225 and this one's about 2. If I really wanted to be more precise, I could add it here. Just add a little bit of distance, and I just made some very curved triangles, so you could make them sharp, but I think it looks better with the curve. So we have the basic object, and now next we're gonna look at our picture again and add the second shapes that were inside of it, so that we can add some more color choices to our cat. For this next section, now we're looking at the smaller triangle. So our original image, it looks like it's different colors because of the light I think people put in pumpkins. I've actually never carved a pumpkin, so I don't know how that works really. I just know that there's light inside and then outside is just the carving. And what we see with the different colors of the orange and the yellows is just because of that the pumpkin itself has like the outer layer. But for this, we're going to just use it as inspiration. And for me, I actually like just following along the same shape. Now for the heart shape eyes, this one's a little bit more challenging because I feel like the eyes look really sad. I don't know if it's just me. So I want to try and do the little circles on the inside to give them some life. Okay, so we went from sad to worried. So, I mean, I'd rather have worried than sad. I guess it's a slight improvement. So now we'll move on to the nose. I like the way that the original nose was, where it was just a little bit shorter at the top and then it was bigger at the bottom. So we'll keep the same idea. And I didn't mean to, but it turns out that I just aligned it with the second set of whiskers. Now next, we're gonna do another triangle inside of our bigger whisker. And this first one that was done is almost the size of the big one. Smaller one made it at 2.5, and the bigger one is about 3.5. The second whisker, then it has the light coming down, and it's just following that curve shape. So then here we drop it as well. And now we're gonna do the same for the other side. Except the other side, there's actually more here of the darker color. So I'm going to make it a little bit shorter. And this one has less of an edge than the other side. Our bottom one was also smaller. You know, you really just want to keep that line like right here, even if it just helps to make that curve, just to keep some guidance. So I'm going to draw a little smiley here because I really don't want to put something outside in the front yard that looks so sad. So we will add the little smile, and I'm making it double because the paint will need to be double, or the absence of paint will need to be double. So I decided that since my cat is black, then I would make this a black cat. I don't think that this would be any surprise to anyone, but I do have enough black paint, so I'm gonna be using some black paint for all of the exteriors, and then I'm going to be using the purple for these sections that are darker, and then mixing my own light purple color for all the small details. So it looks like some of my white actually ended up dying on me. Not sure what caused it, but all the way at the bottom there was still some paint left. So we will make it work with this. Now to start off, I want to start from the lightest to the darkest. So I already know that the little dots are gonna be white, so we're gonna paint those first. Then we'll move into the light purples, then the dark purple, and the black. The main thing whenever you're working with paint is just to always start off small. So just dabble a little bit and see if you like it. And then if you want to make it darker, then you can, or make it lighter, whatever it is. But it's just easiest to always start off small so that you don't end up with a bunch of wasted colors that you don't like. Okay, now that we have our lightest, now we can do the purples. And I think I might have actually over poured how much paint I needed. I barely used acrylics, so that was definitely my bad. Let's make sure you get all the different corners. So whenever you put the paint down, there's no question about what's happening. And just to show you how quickly acrylic dries, you can already see that the white that I wiped off is already drying out. So I left a little bit just in case, so that if I go over too much with the black, I can use it. Now we're going to start, and even though this is something that's gonna go outside, which might usually give more freedom to use bigger brushes, I'm actually deciding to continue using the smaller one because we still want it to look pretty, and this is something to relax and enjoy, so it's okay if it takes a little bit longer. One of the best things about acrylics, which is why so many people like it, is that it is extremely forgiving. So if you make a mistake, you can know with confidence that you can just put a paint right over it and no one's going to notice. So even though like some of the lines that I'm doing, like they might look a little blurry, that's fine, because then we'll finish defining them with the black or the dark purple. So the main thing I focus on whenever I'm painting is just making it look as even as possible. What you'll notice as I add in the purple is that I always grab a whole bunch of paint and then I put it right down the middle, and then I spread it to the rest of it. So on this one, I put a lot of excess. So I'm just trying to absorb it all now, so that we don't have any weird lumps, or as few weird lumps as possible. And then start off for second one. So I finished painting all of the purples, and now I'm gonna figure out what colors to paint the eyes depending on what I have available to me. But I definitely wasted way more paint than I wanted to. There's so much left over of the light purple, and there's gonna be way more of the dark purple and the black. So that's kind of sad. I'm gonna try to figure out what else I can use this for, because I hate wasting. But for now, we can clean our brush. And I always make these little holders out of water bottles, and yeah, it was just the easiest way to get them. Okay, so I found some yellow, so I'm just gonna use the yellow. I also found some neon glow in the dark paint, but I don't know how this works, so we might look into that later. But for now, we're just gonna paint the eyes with our yellow color because Shinobi has yellow eyes. And I did opt to leave the paint and the cap. I had actually forgotten that I used to do this. It's been so long since I used acrylics, but that's usually how I use the acrylics because I don't use enough of them to justify taking out a palette like I tried doing just at the beginning. I always feel bad. The yellow does let a lot of the dark kind of shine through, but it's okay. We'll just continue to layer on the yellow. So while I wait for the yellow to dry, I actually just realized that I didn't paint the nose, and Shinobi's nose is black, so technically that should have been light purple as well. So I'm going to take advantage and paint that while I wait to do one more layer of the yellow. Now we can do the second layer. If you don't wait for it to dry in between coats, then what ends up happening is that you're just moving paint around. So that's why it's important to check. Right, so now that we have the yellow, we're gonna start doing all of the dark purples, and I definitely have way more paint than I need. So the purple is actually gonna turn out to be the most challenging of all because it's the most watery paint out of all of them. I think for the light purple, because it was that mixture with the white that was going bad, that helped it conceal more of the wood. But because I didn't prime before I started painting, then this is really light. I don't have a primer with me, and we're in the middle of a storm, so we're just gonna make do and just do multiple layers of paint. As I'm painting the lines on the whiskers, my main thing is just to make sure that the inner line is straight. The outside, like if I go over the pencil line, that's fine because that one's going to get polished by the black paint. And this dark purple is polishing the light purple paint. My biggest tip for making those skinnier lines is, well, one, use a brush that's as thin as possible along the sides. So like the brush I'm using is not the thinnest. It's probably my second smallest brush, and it's pretty beat up, but I'm fine with it. But for the most part, if you're just trying to learn, I wouldn't recommend a brush like this because all of the hairs are all over the place and it's more rounded than it is flat. So it can just lead to a lot of different issues that you don't need in your life. So right now we have a layer of the dark purple, just a single layer, but you can still see the wood. So I'm gonna do one more layer of the yellow, which we were pending on, so there'll be a total of 3 layers for yellow and 1 more on the purple, and we'll probably end up having to do 3 layers of purple to make it dark enough to conceal the wood. Almost done with the second layer, and you can see the difference, like how much better it looks with the second coat versus the first coat. So I'm actually really not liking the way that this dried out, so I'm gonna do 1 more layer of the purple. So in the end it'll be 3 layers of yellow and 3 layers of purple, and hopefully that will finish filling it in. For this last round, I am going to use a flat brush just to see how that works, hopefully to even out some of those bigger lines that I'm not liking. Whenever you're using a flat brush, you want to dip both of the sides into the paint and then remove the excess. So now that I finished all of the purple stuff, we can start using the black. I was actually able to save the purple, like you can see, back into the little container. So we'll use as much black as we need and then pour it right back so we can save it. Again, we did 3 layers of purple, 3 layers of yellow, 1 layer of pink. And the reason why I didn't focus as much on the lips is because technically, like, the lips are supposed to be like grayish, so the fact that it has a little bit of pencil and some pink and stuff mixed in is not something that I'm concerned about, because it's not realistic to cats, which I get is a cartoon, but still. For the rest of this project though, I will be using the flat brush, because as I was using it to fix the purples, I realized that this is the best brush to use, so I'm definitely going to stick with it. This one is a long handled brush. I wouldn't recommend a long handled though for crafting if you're not used to using it, because it can get pretty awkward in certain situations. And yes, a lot of times I do paint things backwards because I feel like it helps me focus. This was something that they taught me in school, for just being able to paint as the reference, so not even like sketching it beforehand. And I just find it to be super helpful whenever I'm doing any new project. It just takes away the pressure of feeling like it needs to look a certain way, and we can just focus on the motion of filling in the spaces, making straight lines, and just focusing on that instead of the final product, which can sometimes get us in trouble. Doing those little curves that I'm doing around the lips with this big brush, it does take some maneuvering and just some ability to control the brush. So if you're new at this, you want to just take it slow and to actually use one of the smaller brushes to do this. Whenever you apply the paint close to something else, you want to make sure that you dabble it first onto another section before you try to do the edge, so that you don't end up with a whole bunch of clumped up paint next to that border. It just helps it be more clean at the end of the day. You'll notice that sometimes I do flip it around to do the curves, and it's just because I personally feel more comfortable making curves in a certain direction. So that's just a preference. Like the more you paint, the more you start noticing like certain quirks that you might have about the way that you do things and what feels the most comfortable. And to me, it's just very uncomfortable to make like that right edge upside down. For the ears, you'll notice that I'm actually, instead of trying to make a curve, I'm doing like small brush strokes along the side. And that's just like another way to do the lines. Usually I feel confident enough to just do a straight curve, but for some reason today I'm having issues feeling that way about the ears, even though I did it with the more complicated parts like the mouth and the eyes. So we'll go with it and continue painting. These middle areas, like, it's just a straight line, so I'm just trying to create that illusion of the straight line for any of the purple edges I accidentally didn't make into a perfect triangle, and filling in any of the white spaces, because those white spaces are going to stand out a lot. Now if you're using like a typical pumpkin color like orange, it won't be as noticeable, but because of the colors I chose, I do have to be a lot more careful with not letting any of that back, the real wood, show on the front sections. Alright, so we finished painting the black cat, well, all of the black surroundings. Now I'm going to let it dry so that we can finish seeing if there's any spots that I gotta fix. But I think for the most part it does look like we covered the majority of the wood, which is exactly what we wanted to do. Okay, so it finished drying, and for the most part it looks good. I remember that this is going to be hanging outside, so it doesn't need to be perfect because no one's going to be analyzing it that much. The only thing that I am going to be fixing is going to be these edges, and that's just because they're a little too light for my liking. I want it to all just be like completely like black, so the purple will stand out even more. Okay, now for the finishing touches, I'm honestly just, I don't want to risk the black, so I'm just going to actually use the pencil to emphasize it a little. I don't think it needs to be like the harsh black to make it stand out. Alright, so now that I finished painting it, next we're going to replace this original twine that it comes with for this purple ribbon so that it matches everything. And then on the purple ribbon itself, or over here, we're going to try to add something more Halloweeny for the season. Like, I'm thinking this could be something that could be changed throughout the year, because I know it's a pumpkin, but it looks like a cat, so I think it could be used year round. So that's the plan. So this isn't the easiest to pass through, but because of the size of the hole, we can just use the point of the pencil we used to sketch to push it through. And now we have the ribbon. Now this is only intended, at least for my purposes, to be something to hang from, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut it at this point. And make a knot. We made it small. Oops. So then it can live in the back where no one can see it, and then we can just hang the pretty side towards the outside. Here you have your ribbon at the top done. You're going to want to grab another piece of ribbon, then fold it, and it's just going to be like tying a shoelace. Put it facing towards you and then pull it through. And then you're done. So after all the steps we did, all the painting, all the ribbon changing, all of that, this is our final result, which is absolutely adorable. Normally I would try and throw in some adorable b-roll, but because it's hurricane time, I can't do that. So hopefully you enjoy imagining how this will look like outside, which is going to be really cute. If you also make this, please make sure you share it with us. You can tag us at Magical Wiggles. We love to see your projects. And if you want to see what else you can do on how to integrate the love you have for your cats, go ahead and watch my mom's video on how to make a sleep mask with a cat face on it, or cat shape. So she'll see you over there.